it is you and you are it, right? We're all part of that thing. So when it comes to an event, when it comes to racing, it's the same thing again. It's a shared experience, because life is nothing if not a series of shared experiences. There are times when you need to maricol and tell people that it's okay, they're doing okay. And there's times to tell an athlete that they are capable of much more. Really special moments have come from athletes that didn't think they could, that got it done.
Listen, Stokely, where we try to be involved, to listen and learn for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told.
Welcome to Stokely, a podcast where we explore environmental conservation, our human mindset and adventure. Each week we invite you into conversation with people from all walks of life, people who truly inspire us and set about contributing to a greater place for us all to call home. So please take some time to settle in for our conversation today with our host, Majell.
Hi everyone, and thank you again for joining us for another episode of Stokely. And today I get to speak with the other half of the incredible duo that is SQUADRUN, and that is Kerry Suter. I've been lucky enough to know Kerry in a number of ways for a number of years. It's been incredible to work alongside Kerry and to see what he created when he first set out to establish this concept that was SQUADRUN and turn it into, as we've mentioned before, a family. And to see him have such a positive influence on so many people achieving so many arduous goals that they set for themselves. Of course, Kerry is only one half of that. There is Ali, who we spoke to on a previous podcast. You know, as individuals, they are incredible people in their own right, and Kerry's been an incredible athlete and learnt a lot from being on the coalface of trail and ultra running for a number of years now as well. I'm really great to be able to introduce, again, a bit of an insight to the mind behind a community such as SQUADRUN. And Kerry has got an incredible way of looking at the world, and I'm really, really happy to be able to share that with you. I just want to say thanks again to Kerry for joining us, and I really hope that this gives you a little bit more insight behind what it takes to create a community in a niche sport and then turn that community into a community that gives back to itself and grows upon its own enthusiasm, energy, and support. So here's an intro to Kerry Suter. You can't find everything out about Kerry Suter in only an hour and a half, so this is just an intro, but I hope you very much enjoy it. And before we get on with the conversation, I'd like to take a moment to thank the traditional custodians upon the lands where this podcast is created and listened to. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge the everlasting connection that they have with the land, waters, and culture. So thanks again for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy the episode, and we look forward to hearing from you and any feedback you have about this chat we get to have with Kerry Suter. So until next time, enjoy. You're super chill with the world right now.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I think that for a lot of my life, I've had a lot of sharp edges, you know, like I think more recently have realized that, you know, I'm the curator of my own existence, and that every interaction that I have with everyone and everything, it's like, it's my museum, right? And I choose what I put in a glass cabinet and write a plaque about. So if someone, you know, is opposed to me, or, you know, publicly, you know, that niggle or bad vibe that you might get from someone, you know, either I can take it on board and decide to respond to it, or I can just recognize that person must have a lot of love for me to invest that time thinking about me in that way. So it's almost like a bit of a flip in the mindset, whereas, you know, you get a keyboard warrior have a go at you and you're inclined to immediately just thrash at the keyboard back at them. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of those demons have been put to bed.
it's so disarming to hear that, right? Like if you'd be like, thanks for telling me that. I know that is really painful for me to read, but I know it just comes from a place of love. Thank you. I appreciate you. Like how disarming is that for someone who's trying to troll you?
So you can't do it from a place of this will really rile them up because they've failed to get me angry. You really genuinely have to be honest in that. It just washes over me, and I'm not going to focus on it. I'm not going to think about this moment again. It's a cloud in the sky that you acknowledge exists, but don't focus on the cloud. It just passes by, and there's social media exposes us to all sorts of things like this nowadays. And, I'm on social media to give and to help and to spread love and support people in running and those sorts of things. There's really, I don't have the capacity for much else on there right now. Like if your whole intent was to jump on social media and pick fights with people, maybe, I don't know, interesting pastime, but you might want to create a separate account for that.
So in saying all of that, I don't want to say that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but has it been different in the past? Like have you're less riled up now and you come from a much more chilled place, self-confess, but like, has it like, what was it like previously? Like looking back on it in hindsight?
I think being a competitive athlete, it's really easy to be in a situation where you're gonna butt heats. Competition is not just a competition in yourself. When you are racing, particularly at a club or regional or national level, you're racing other people. So you're not just, it's not just a stopwatch. In trail running, often it's a little bit easier because it's you versus the distance. But, if you're lining up, for 10K or cross-country races or, any of the racing you're going to do that's going to be, hotly contested and you're in the mix, it's certainly far easier to get your elbows out than it is to just go there with a clearer mindset and race. So I think as a younger guy with, a decade of racing, through my 30s, it's very easy to sort of that, I always say it's sort of more like the red lightsaber, it was always a dark side. That's where I got my power from, any photos of me racing, my teeth were always clenched and I was really pushing hard. And I'd like to think now if I was racing now, or sure, when I'm pushing in an effort now, I can generally go to a better place where I'm more calm and mellow. I recognize again, it's like the cloud in the sky, that the hardship that you're enjoying is part of the process, but not to focus on it.
It's interesting that, because being a bit older and feeling like you've been through experiences and whatnot, you kind of want to pass that information on in some ways to younger people and say, hey, avoid what I did. But going there and doing it and learning personally it seems like the best and only way to do it sometimes, right?
Yeah, look, they're really, if you had said to me in my 20s or 30s that this is how you appear, this is you never really understand yourself, isn't it? That's that real true sense of ego. Like if I said, who is Majell, you would do your best to describe you as you think you are, but really the person who knows you best are those you've had interactions with, because your ego is so inwardly, I mean, you've the best you've got is a mirror. You can describe how you look, but how you are, that's a reflection from other people. So, I saw that someone was doing a personality test, and the personality test had a little bit of testing that the individual completed, but a whole heap of testing that their friends and family completed about them. And I thought that seems so much more relevant, right? Because it's all just projection anyway, right? Like my hand in front of my face here, this is just what my brain thinks is my hand. And where is the brain? Where is the self? Where is the soul? It's all got to come from someone else to feed back into me. So I don't know who I am unless I get feedback from other people. And so the people are always like, oh, I want to change myself. I want to, I want to be the change in myself. But really the change is coming from other people and how other people respond to you.
How do you build that kind of a concept and whatnot into the work you do with coaching? We exist in the space of running and competition and bettering ourselves on a physical level. It can be a pretty shallow plane in some ways. And I don't mean shallow as in like self-absorbed or whatnot, but more like it can be pretty shallow in that you can measure it by a simple metric or there's like some variables that you can use that they're not really that deep, right? They're not really that like you say, they don't really reflect who you really are and why you do certain things. Like we use running as an example because it's like such a common thread between you and me and a lot of people that would be listening. But how do you build that whole psychology into what you do in the community that you coach and the people that you coach with?
I think that getting caught up on the numbers, to boil it all down to, time seems like such a silly thing that so many people are focused on. The problem is, so the assumption is that you go outside for a trail run, right? And you're in the environment, you are this human being that's on a trail surrounded by trees, and you are separate from that environment, you are within it. However, the mindset probably needs to be, you are the environment, you are part of that. It is you and you are it, right? We're all part of that thing. So when it comes to an event, when it comes to racing, it's the same thing again. It's a shared experience, because life is nothing if not a series of shared experiences. We are the universe experiencing itself, right? And so if you lie on your deathbed and you go, my time doing this thing is coming to an end and it'll be interesting to see what comes next, did I accumulate enough experience? Often it's going to be more meaningful things, like the memories that you have of doing amazing things like being at Ultra Trail Australia. Unlikely it's going to be, gee, I wish I just watched a couple more episodes of Home and Away.
You know me well, Kerry. You know me well.
I hope you haven't missed any Home and Away during lockdown, Majell.
Mate, I definitely will be honest. I definitely have watched a couple more shows than I have in the last 5 years during this period of time. All through social experience, really, like doing it with mates. But yeah, anyway. Hey, I was just thinking, mate, like, because what you and Ali have co-created with SQUADRUN it's been like really, really nice to see come to life over the last kind of like 5 years or so. I think it's been around about 5 years, right? And I just feel like when you now look at SQUADRUN, like the label of SQUADRUN, how does it make you feel compared to what it did when you first launched it? Like, has it got this like a deeper sense of like meaning to it when you see someone like running in a SQUADRUN t-shirt?
Man, those shirts are everywhere. And what's crazy about it, we'll hear like from someone who's at like some weird race in the middle of nowhere. Like there'll be a little club run up in Northern Territory, and then someone will be in a SQUADRUN shirt, and someone will go over and, hey, do you know Kerry and Ali? And then they'll just like weird, like you get these weird, like the stories from the corners of the globe. I was doing a run in the Tongariro National Park, and I was wearing my shirt, and I was just sort of cruising around the mountain, and someone just like shouts out, "Go SQUADRUN!" And I kind of like laughed because I was like, "Oh, that's funny," because I made it. But it's funny. Like when it started, so 5 years ago, it's like creating a river. You don't know how you can't control the flow of a river. You think you can, but you totally can't. And so I thought it was going to be this thing, and I thought it was going to be, anyone who wants coaching, training for a serious thing, they're a serious athlete. They're in the top 10% of the field, and they want to get from 7th to 3rd. They want a spot on the podium, and they're taking this thing seriously. And I was really surprised that it wasn't that. It was more actually everyone going, I'm doing this really big, terrifying thing, and I need some guidance. I need some help, and I need some support. And that really just it just shifted everything. So you talk about, how do you feel about what it's become? I feel great, but I've had no control over it. Like it's just, imagine you sit in your car and you put your foot on the accelerator pedal and Jesus takes the wheel, because you have no control over which way it goes. And people have just made it this steamrolling, great fun thing. And we get together and we have heaps of laughs, and we've got athletes at the front of the field and athletes at the back of the field and everywhere in between. And they know each other from online interactions. They know each other from race to race. But what does it become now? I would struggle to describe it in a way that could do it any justice. It's not. I'm proud of it, but like it's as much Ali's doing as mine, probably more so now. But it is I guess big, if you want to call it big. I like popular. I guess it's that too. But I would like to think that it's genuine. We just help people, and it just grows, and they're all good people.
So give it a crack. I really want you to try and explain it. I would love that. You've got to, mate.
Man, we have all walks of life. We have so many different people in this community. We've got lurkers. The craziest thing is you can have, a group. We've got a couple of groups of like 500 or 600 people all training towards targets across Australasia. Some people never post; they'll always read. Some people aren't on Facebook; they never see any of it. Some people will show up and meet us at expos, and they'll say, we've loved all the emails and the stuff. Sorry, you don't know who I am because I've never said anything to you, but I followed the plan religiously, and I'm in the best shape of my life. Those sorts of things. What is it? I don't know. It's almost like it almost has its own life, like an independent person could come into it with whatever mindset that they have, like whatever attitude and baggage that they bring, and they jump in the river, and by the time they bob up, they're already in the flow, like they already get the feel of the people and the community and the vibe, and they're just kind of doing it as well. And the next thing you know, they're posting about their recent, 10K time trial that went really well, and everyone's jumping in there saying, great work, I'm on the same plan and I'm going to do mine tomorrow. It's weird that it's just got a life of its own now, and you couldn't steer it if you wanted it to. If you wanted to, it would take a serious cancel culture to bring it down.
Those things exist now, mate.
I
don't wish that upon anyone, but they definitely exist.
I can assure you, I've never been dark-faced at a Halloween party, or I don't know. I've probably done plenty to upset people in my past. I apologize deeply if you've been offended by me previously.
Look, mate, I'm sure they'll take that on and understand. Well, look, throughout this conversation, we'll give them the real Kerry. But within that, surely, I know that you say it's hard to control, but what are the things that you and Ali have done purposefully and intentionally along the way to be like, we need to do this. We see so much value and impact in doing this specific thing. We've got to do it. And I'll give you an example of what I see from the outside is like you take because you've only got time, right? Time and effort. And you take those two things and you do things like be on the finish line or set up a bit of a marquee at the finish line or set up a tent at an expo. Like they're the real obvious things that I can see. But what have you both done over that time that you've like, I guess it's like a strategic move to be like, we need to do this for our community and we can only implement it on the back end of things right now to allow it to be part of that river and grow from there. Like, what are those kind of things?
I think for us, the placement with events has been really important because I guess quite different to a lot of other coaches, you will really see other coaches at events, which surprises me because the whole purpose of the coaching process is that you guide the people through the training to the objective, and that's their party time. Either it's a competitive race or they want to do well by themselves. Regardless of what the goal, that was the objective for them to be there on that day. So surely you need to be there. Surely you need to see them in the day or two prior and say, hey, look, you have done well, or you've missed a few things, but don't worry. You're the sum of all your training, not the few days that you missed. You'll be fine. Just take it easy and push later. Then, all these conversations. And then you see them on the finish line and they're so excited to have completed this thing. They're at the potentially one of the highest points emotionally in their life. That you see someone climb the top of Furber Stairs and finish that last little bit to Scenic World, and I bet for them time has completely slowed down. Everyone's clapping in slow motion, and the motion comes over their face, and you can't help but be part of that because you're part of the journey. Like you not only on race day, perhaps talking to their family or support crew have been, waiting at the finish line for them and you've been chatting to them, but throughout the training as well. So you're so invested in that person, you have that moment with them, you have a quick breath because someone else is coming and you know them too. And it's hard to explain the feeling of it, but it's so high. Like the feelings that we have on race day for our athletes are so high that come Tuesday or Wednesday, we're pretty much in an emotional coma. Like it is hard to function. It's hard to smile. It's hard to stay awake because there's no ebb without flow. And the week that follows a race week is devastating for us. And we have to pick up the pieces because quite often there's a race, the following weekend or 2 weeks later that we've got to go to for a whole bunch of different athletes. But you're right. There are other things, there are outside things that you see. Of course, but probably you don't see is the emails, like Ali's almost certainly right now doing emails. She'll be answering, like 100 emails would have come in since I started talking to you. It's like there's a lot of people that we have to help. And so that's happening too. So we have those genuine relationships with people. And when you're a coach, you're in their personal life. They're not just at work trying to sell building aggregate or roofing iron or timber nails, that you are. About they run with their dog on some days and the kids have been sick and, they do night shifts and, all of these things. You're so woven through the fabric of all of these people that I find it hard to keep track of them all. But, it's a huge community of people that you are, part of.
Unreal, mate. Yeah, that sounds like a moving monster in a very polite way. Because and this whole thing, I'm trying to draw a similarity to say like a personal adventure, because for you, this must, like you say, have had its ebbs and flows over on kind of like the high level, on the macro side of things over 5 years. There's got to have been some challenging times for you within this. Can you speak to that? Like, what are the things that people wouldn't know about that you've had to?
In order, the momentum, like it's easy to look at it, I guess, from a business perspective, and it's a coaching empire of some sort, right? Like it's probably the largest, most popular in Australasia, right? Like, no two people would be supporting as many people as we are. But it has certainly come at the expense. I felt like for the first 2 or 3 years, we were living out of vans in Bilpin. We would be running to catch a train. Like just the manic connectivity of our life to get from one thing to the next thing. To always be traveling, to never be home. I remember one of the we had a stop at a train station, maybe out near Richmond or Parramatta or something. And I remember having to run, carrying Ali's suitcases with a backpack on my back and running up the set of stairs. You have to go up the stairs sometimes and then across the train tracks and then back down the other side, and running down the other side and wedging a suitcase in the door as it closed so that Ali could get in and, push it open. And then you literally, you huddle in there, and then standing room only, you get out a laptop and you're trying to type and answer emails off a tethered mobile connection whilst you're in transit to somewhere else. And that's just the shape of it. And you're still falling behind on helping the people that you want to help, because they're genuine people, right? It's not like, oh, that order didn't get processed, so that person's not going to get a cubic meter of builder's aggregate. There's a person who's asked a question and they want an answer for it. And they're a human being, so you don't let them down. You try and do it. So, yeah, it hasn't been easy, and it will continue to not be easy, but it's so rewarding to help people, right? Like you would go out of your way to help someone with your skill set. You know so much. You're a specialist in your field. So if you can impart some wisdom and knowledge, you'd be like, I'm willing to forego some sleep or, whatever it is to help people. And I do it. We do it kindly. And weirdly, we don't really check out of it. We don't be like, I can't believe I had to spend all of my Sunday answering emails. It just happens.
Mm. What do you find that you say you are woven into people's personal lives, and so much of coaching is like that whole psychology element of it, and trying to just deal with people's like internal belief about themselves and whatnot. Like, what are the things that you continually try to reinforce in people when they are doing something that is maybe quite a stretch, And because I guess I ask this because it applies to more than just running, right? Like someone else might have a great business idea like what you've got, but can't really see it, like believes in it so much, but then has so much self-doubt too, because, like they just don't know where that river's going to go. Like, what are the things?
If you lean forward far enough, you have to jump. And once you start falling, you'll get very quick at building a parachute. I stood on the precipice with SQUADRUN as a spreadsheet that I didn't think would necessarily work. And I thought I could put months more into this before I felt comfortable, probably a lifetime polishing it until I felt like it was ready for this. I can do this launch thing, or I can make it happen. I realized that it might probably work and I'll build the parachute on the way down. And that's a really reckless attitude that I wouldn't generally sort of recommend. However, I did it, and I built it very quickly, and it worked. It was fortunate in that it was something that, I don't want to say, like, if you are passionate about something, Majell, you will eventually become a master at it. Say, Majell, you like playing the guitar, right? You're not very good at it, but you love it. And if you do it enough, you're going to get good at it. It's like that 10,000 hours principle, right? You will eventually become a master of playing the guitar. And if you have an interest in it, chances are someone else has an interest in it. More than one person will have an interest in it. Likely, in this day and age, thousands of people will have an interest in it. So if you are a master at it, people will be willing to pay you to learn from you, to get what knowledge you have gained on your road to becoming a master. So if you love something and you are passionate about it, it should happen organically. And don't be afraid to look over the precipice and actually just jump. If you are on the brink of something and you genuinely understand it, love it, and are passionate about it, just start it. If there's a secret project that we need to know about, Majell, I hope to see its launch within the month.
Mate, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. Don't worry about that, Kerry. We're jumping. It's got to do with protecting wild places, but that's all I'll say for now. What was it before this that I use the old, what were you running from, Kerry? Like, what were you jumping from? Because there was a life before this that I'm assuming here, but didn't hold the passion that you've got for coaching and working with athletes and, like everything to do with your community, because there was a life before this, and obviously that wasn't ticking that box. Not ticking that box, but not fulfilling you on a deeper level.
Yeah, life was really beige. I had the ivory tower office job, and I wore my business costume and necktie, and I clocked in and did the thing, and I attended meetings after meetings, and there were reports, and it was everything that you would expect from the genuine two-piece suit office job. And it was serious, like network security at the highest level, Origin Energy, CBA, the accounts that I worked on were not small accounts. And it was serious stuff. And I'm sure to someone's bottom line and some report somewhere, there was a lot of money moving around, but I don't know that I saw a lot of it. And it became a real drain, and it felt really beige and repetitive. And 10 years of my life just passed sitting in a cubicle, and it's weird because like Squadron wasn't born because of that. Squadron just was born and then consumed that. That had to go because I couldn't maintain both, and I chose the one that was, on an upward trend as opposed to, the endless hamster wheel grind. In the modern age in IT, you've always got that sort of Damocles hanging over your head that you could be made redundant at any time, lose your job, and be unable to pay your mortgage. So it's terrifying when you start a small business that you have to ask yourself, will it be okay to pay the mortgage? And it has. So I'm very lucky. And lucky too that it's a recreation space. Lucky that I'm passionate about, an activity that is so much fun to go and do. I mean, I know people that install swimming pools and they love installing swimming pools, and that's their job and that's their business and they love doing it. Each to their own, I guess, right?
You said it was on an upward trend. And that's why you kind of went into SQUADRUN because it was on that upward trend. But like, what were the metrics that you used on your, like, personally to measure that upward trend?
The business was continuing to grow slowly in terms of the referrals that we were getting. People getting Squadron athletes tend to like acquire more Squadron athletes. Word of mouth works very well for my business because I guess we try very hard to do a good job. So the referral rate's very high for us. We don't really advertise. I don't like telling people that they need a running coach because that's I don't know, it's kind of garish. If you tell people that they need a running coach, I would far sooner have people feel as though that they wanted a running coach as opposed to the other way around. So it was growing at like 10% or 20% per annum. And I was thinking, it had already absorbed Ali's full-time job. She was a teacher, and there was certainly enough work for both of us to be doing nothing other than Squadron. To be fair, I wasn't doing a particularly good job of my IT career once, Squadron had gotten to a certain size, and, Ali was trying to carry a hell of a lot of it, and was hardly fair that I was still in a 9 to 5. How much does anything need to pay? If you're passionate about it, you'll get by. You will have met people that have had kids, but they live in a motorhome and, or a caravan or a shed in the bush. How much money do you need to get by? You'll find happiness. There's some of the happiest people in the world are people that have absolutely nothing. I met a guy on the Gold Coast who had been with a genuine persistence hunting tribe, and he said every night they would get around the fire and they would tell stories and dance, and then they'd go to sleep, and all that they had was like box thorn hedges that they'd pull over themselves. That was they had no real worldly possessions. He said they were the happiest people that he's ever met, and they had nothing but companionship, I guess.
The community that we've been lucky enough to be welcomed into, I find it so funny because that, like, I don't know if you do know this, but I used to work for Origin Energy as well. And I feel like it's so funny that we were both in that world, and now you and me host these Q&As on race weekend. Some you set up, and I just kind of like drop in at the very last moment and say, "Hey, Kerry, you need a hand with this?" You're like, "You're about to ruin my stage," and I like pop up and ask a couple of silly questions. But the community is pretty incredible, isn't it? It's not like any other community I've been a part of, and it's interesting because I feel like when you speak to people in other sports, they also say that when they do get to interact with, I guess, trail running specifically, that it is different. Like there's a different flavor and a different feel to the community that we exist in. Like, what's your take on it?
There's something really pure about our interactions with nature and wilderness, and that comes through in our community because it's not just about the exercise, it's about the experience. Because if you look at other sports that don't have the communities or cultures that trail running do, you could say, oh, it's probably just like the marathon culture. What marathon training groups are you part of that are in any way as supportive of each other and the sort of adventures that people go on, or and that's got to be the closest thing. I see sometimes. So I'm a member of like some New Zealand fishing communities, right, or hunting communities, and any time the environment is involved, people are genuinely passionate about that thing, and you'll see that come through in the community as well. And maybe not, some of those groups aren't supportive of one another in the same way that we are as athletes, because there's more of a shared experience with what we do, the way that we test our bodies and push ourselves, in nature and in wilderness. So I think probably we've got a commonality in that regard as well. But you could talk to anyone that has a close relationship with the land. You talk to a second generation farmer, or probably even a first generation farmer, someone who spends their whole time, on the land. They are deeply passionate about it, and I guess it's about finding the overlap in that and getting those people together, because that really is the strongest voice. You will not find a single person that's opposed to these things. Who wants to protect wilderness? Everyone, like 100% of people. Might be some people in an ivory tower that have been distracted by a bottom line, like some dollar sign on a hook for them. But the overwhelming majority, we're 98% of people. Let's put us in the streets and we'll fight it out. The 2% of people that care about, bulldozing some artifacts so that they can get to some coal, or the 98% of people that think we should probably preserve this thing so that the next generation can go and enjoy it as well. We'll fight it out and we'll see who wins, because there's a lot more of us than there are of them. So why we can't unify that voice, I don't understand, because we all do love it. We're all passionate about it. It's not a blue party, red party thing. Everyone loves the environment. So I don't understand why we don't have those loud, supportive communities like we do with runners. Where are the high fives for protecting, crops of New Zealand kahakateas or ancient eucalypts? And, for some reason we need to build the events around that. Maybe that needs to be the experience for us runners, at least the runners. And we can find ways to put everyone else in there as well, the kayakers and the people that fish and the people that farm. Or we just need to somehow connect everyone to the land more. You're certainly more passionate about protecting something that you are involved in. If you go into nature and then someone says, oh, actually, we're going to bulldoze that next week, by crikey, you're not going to, over my dead body, you're going to do that. We have to enable people's access to these places as well in the same time. So so whilst I love conservation, I'm actually weirdly opposed to lock it and leave it conservation. Putting a fence around something and saying, that's not for us, we don't go in there, is, I feel, the wrong thing to do to protect that thing in the long term. Because if no one goes in there, it's perceived to have no value. But if you put people in there, they're like, this is important to me and I can't explain why, but it's part of me and you're not going to take it away from me.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Like, to speak to that, I feel like there's a way that can be managed, because, like, the perfect example is the Hillary Ultra, right, up in just out of Auckland there in the
Waitakere Ranges.
Yeah, and how they had to stop the event because of the kauri trees and people running and carrying. I think it was the certain disease that was killing off the kauri trees.
Yeah, fungus. Yep.
Over that distance, like that came to the situation where they had to not let anyone in because it was destroying the trees. I guess, like, that's an example where it kind of has to be managed case by case. But I do get where you're coming from in regards to, like, lock it up and don't let anyone in there. It's how can we exist and share those areas with having the most minimal human impact we can. I guess, like,
literally the more people you put in it, the harder it will be for lobbyists to bulldoze it.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's why I guess like they're very, very successful at clearing rainforests out in the far depth of a whole range of different countries, because no one's there to say, what are you doing? Like, and an orangutan can't say no. I would say, I want to use the word lucky. I also want to say like very privileged to be able to interact with a number of what we would say like elite runners in the sport of trail running. I think it's pretty amazing the access that we've been able to have with these people over the last few years. I think you probably have a little bit more access to them because you have a house and you can offer them a bed, whereas I am normally skeeving off your couch and I don't have a house. You just have to
be buying your good looks and charm, Majell. You don't have no. Look, we'll just back up for a minute there, because you and I know that they're ordinary people and they shower, shit and shave like the rest of us, right? So they're no more important. They have a platform because of their what they've achieved in their sport. So I honestly, I certainly don't consider any of these people more important than any other people. So let's not go too far. Like, Debo's a funny chap, but I know a lot of funny chaps. So, he's just one of many. We're talking about Robbie Britton earlier, and we are fortunate to have met some wonderful people, but then that's our sport. I could probably open my house up to anyone, and anyone that comes in and stays is, almost certainly more than welcome if I have space. So you're right. We do have access to people that have generally have a good platform for engaging other people. You may continue what you were going to ask.
No, I appreciate that because I think that is part of in some ways, a bit of an illusion that a number of followers does lead to some sort of superpower, where really it is, it's not necessarily the case. And I find that, like, I find the whole sponsor athlete thing very, very interesting. And I'm sure you have too, like the honestly, like if you pay close attention, which I know you and I always do, you do notice when you are getting treated differently based upon a certain metric, like a sponsorship or a partnership, or if you are, you're lucky enough to be not lucky enough. I struggle with that word a little bit, but fortunate enough. Well, I mean, fortunate. Yeah, there's certain elements of fortune and luck that go into allowing you to do the job that you've been given with regards to UTA and Tarawera, and announcing and being on the finish line and being that like that person that has that opportunity and has that job and that responsibility. And I feel that that can be quite a role where you can get alluded to, like, oh, that person has this different superpower, or this, they're special in this some way. And in our sport, there's a lot of people in that situation. And yes, we do celebrate them a little bit differently sometimes. Like you and I do the elite athlete Q&A, and we really do every year. We think about, okay, how can we diversify this and not just make it about elites? Like, how can we have one panel that integrates, Frank, who is 89 years old and he's about to run 22K.
Yep.
And it's
Frank
just like,
what a legend. Yep.
Unreal, right? And so how, like, I guess my question out of my ramble is, how do you view that element of the sport, and what benefits do you think that has for the sport going forward, and also like what you would prefer to, I guess, change about it so it doesn't get too one way, So there is this separation of like, oh, that person is untouchable and I can't speak to them, because that's not cool in our sport.
No. Okay, so we've covered a bit of ground with that question.
Yeah. Big ground.
I'm going to start just quickly with personal integrity, in that I refuse to have any personal or professional sponsorships. So SQUADRUN, we will never carry any sponsorship, and we pay for everything. We occasionally sample some things, but Ali and I never want to be on a label. So we want to be impartial to anything, so that we can genuinely say to our athletes what's honest and going to be right for them, or not just our athletes, but probably all athletes, right? I think I owe it in my role as a coach to not be, swayed by any particular brand, so that I can have a genuine discussion with someone about shoes and say, here's a list of manufacturers that I'd recommend, and these are the shoes that I think might be right for you. That's an example, or nutrition for those sorts of things. So I have clearly separated my business and my running career and Ali's from any sort of association with brands. So when it comes to, social media presence, marketing, social influence, for us, it's really just going to be about the people, isn't it? As opposed to, results or brands. But individuals in the sport and about them in social media, and you're talking about influencers, I know that's where you're going with this. It's not just this sport, it's all sports. And it is, some people find it very hard to digest, but it's actually really natural. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about tennis or motorsports or NFL or just about anything, you're going to have people, aspirational people, that people want to, that they aspire to be like, or they're just simply amazed at their daily lives. And that's fine. It's okay to dream. It's okay to have nice stuff. So these things will happen organically. And I guess we have to be okay with that, because that's the environment that we are in. Where it is hard for these people, it must be horrible to be an influencer and to be in a situation where these influencers often are in situations where they're under pressure from brands to do certain things, to have a certain number of likes, to grow their personal brand in a certain way, so that they can, sell more backpacks or hydration vests or shoes or whatever it is. And that would be a horrible life to lead, particularly if it's tied to athletic endeavor that isn't infinite and it relies in some regard on results. So these people have an important role to play in our sport, and they will always have an important role to play. And there's really nothing you or I could say about it that would make it any different, other than to accept that they're there, acknowledge these people exist in our own way. It's great. You could take, let's use Debo for a good example again. He does so much great stuff with his own personal brand. His great podcasts. He puts out meaningful content. He asks good questions. He doesn't pull his punches. He's a genuine, honest person. And I hope that resonates. He's entirely transparent with his behavior online as he is as a person in real life, which I think is probably more important than what brands they support or how big a following that they have. But these people are also tasked with this really important thing of being able to steer communities towards things. So what if they were passionate about a cause that that people could get behind? What if we could be using that social media? You don't want to say as leverage, but at least to raise awareness, right? Like that's really what could be good. And what's to say it's wrong for you, Majell, to go out actively on a social media campaign where you look to increase your own personal profile so that more people can find what you're interested in, so that you can protect that thing. If it's, a national park or whatever it is, so be it. I don't think we should shy away from those things. And certainly, like I say, each to their own. I know people who are professional social influencers. All they do is they concentrate on what their Instagram posts are going to be each day, and they've got they haven't got a competitive contribution to a sport other than the fact that they have a huge following and they like running. And I don't know. I'm more power to them. I don't like it. I probably said at the top of this podcast, I don't really have too much of an opinion on how people operate in those spaces.
I just feel like it's super interesting because of, and I've spoken quite a bit of depth with a mutual friend of ours, Dave, who is very vocal in his belief about how trail running had this rise at, simultaneously with the social media world, specifically things like Instagram and whatnot, and how they've kind of both worked together to grow the sport and also the personalities within it and content game and et cetera, and how I just wonder how this sport would exist right now. Would Ironman have been able to buy things like Tarawera and UTA if this simultaneous growth happened? Like I find it interesting because to know where it came from is also to know like what its potential is in the future too.
Yeah, and it's not to say that this will always be, the darling sport of social media, but there's no Occam's razor. There's not going to be any one thing that you can attribute to the rise of trail running. But I think probably one of the most potent things has been, you now carry a high-powered camera with you everywhere you go, and it's connected to social media so that people, everywhere can see that, you went and did an amazing run on the weekend with your friends, and it was beautiful, and you took these photos, and so you've got, really you've got portable cameras, social media, a fun sport to do that's achievable for people. There's so much that's gone on with it, but hey, you know what, Majell, on the piggybacking on that is environmental awareness, trail access. People know more about what trails are in their local neighborhood now than they ever have. Further afield, what parks have got what trails and where they go. More people now are out really exploring them than probably historically ever have. So the probably the onus is on those that haven't capitalized on it, like national parks should be on board. They should be, the growth of national parks should have gone with us on this journey. They really should have. There should be not necessarily a way to monetize this access, but at least integrate their role in it with our role in it. Like hugely symbiotic is our relationship as trail runners with the environment. And wouldn't it be great to see the most followed posts on Instagram to be from Vic Parks or MPWS or Q Parks? It would be great if everyone's like, yeah, man, they're putting up great content. I didn't know about those trails out there. It's cool that they posted that link about Girraween or something. Like, I must go check it out. Great running. I'll go.
Yeah, definitely. I just find it so interesting. Like, I just find it really, really fascinating. And as someone who has a really great insight to the sport and also the back end of the sport, I think it's just cool to be able to have these conversations, just to have them, because they're not something I can always have with people, and people to the level of engagement that you have with it, I feel.
We're very much sort of like with events, we're around the corner, right? So we see all the strings that control the system, it's we know all the event directors, we know, we kind of know what the money's like on all of these things. We really understand this, and we have genuine relationships with, most of the event directors across Australasia. And we really understand the role of the event space in trail running as well. And my relationship, I think, with UTA, getting back to what you mentioned earlier about, the whole that VIP celebrity status that you have if you're holding a microphone, or I am fortunate to do it, but certainly I don't take it for granted. Like, Ironman could easily, they've got their own people that do presenting and finish lines, and they may change the landscape of the sport entirely. It's hard to predict. We would never have predicted, 5 or 10 years ago that we'd be in this situation. So. It's really, I guess it's hard to know what the future is for the sport in terms of predicting it. But so long as social media remains, it's a positive influence on social media that we have, whilst Zuckerberg is slowly cutting away at QAnon and misinformation and, hate groups and those sorts of things, you would think he's watering this garden most of all, right? What we bring to social media is probably better than what anyone else brings. So maybe we're all on the same trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, we'll soon find out, I guess. And it's even, it's a lot more difficult to try and figure out what it's going to look like, considering that not many events happen these days. So.
We're back at full steam, man. New Zealanders, we're 100%. It's they're all lining up. There's Auckland Marathon's taking place soon. That's 7,500. There's a massive event in the forest this weekend of mountain bikes and runners. We're really fortunate that we took the steps that we took, and weirdly, I don't know, even WHO said we don't think lockdowns are the right thing to do. And I got to think that if any country right now said, you're going indoors for 6 to 8 weeks and we will pay you to be indoors, but do not leave the house, we would be on top of this thing, the whole world could shut this down, but we all have to jump at the same time, right? And there's just no way you can coordinate that. You can't get a room full of people to clap at the same instant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that. I think that Virgin Armstrong probably sits in a room where people would all clap simultaneously. There's no doubt about that.
he's a meta human being. That's how he does that. He's not really one of us. And this isn't his first time around. He's had a few goes at existence. So that's how he's done it.
Let's bookmark that chat. What are you like to bring it back to the work that you guys do? Like, what is the belief and the purpose and the underlying reason why and cause that you have behind SQUADRUN?
We have only a few rules, really. And it is, the first rule is no injuries, and the second rule is have fun. And the third rule is if you can get some running done, that would be really good. But you see, the running is why they came, but it's actually the third thing in the list. So I think that because fun takes priority, obviously it's just like an event, right? For an event to take place, it has to be safe, right? You can't hold an event if it's not going to be safe. The second and third, like somewhere down there would be financially viable, but probably be safe is first. So, but fun is a high priority for us. So everything is in good humor, and that's how we will always be. I think we've lucky that we've got this sort of dichotomy. Ali and I are, I don't want to say opposed, because it's not really opposed, but we bring a bit of duality to how we do it. The good cop, bad cop game is entertaining, and weirdly with athletes, probably unsurprisingly effective. There are times when you need to mollycoddle and tell people that it's okay, they're doing okay. And there's times to tell an athlete that they are capable of much more and they're disappointing themselves and me, and they need to toughen up. And so generally I normally get that role and Ali gets the other one, but knowing where it needs to be applied, I think, is probably the real skill as a coach, right? Is when you need to punch an athlete, when you need to push an athlete. What
are the signs that allow you to know which is the right approach to take?
Well, you've got to know the person. I mean, you've done some coaching as well, Majell. You can't just obviously shoot lightning bolts and assume there's going to be a good response to it. You have a relationship with an athlete, and they know what to expect from you in some regard. But I think that all of us probably need that handling every now and again. Like sometimes I want the soft pillow, and sometimes I want the hard pillow. And I think there's. It can be performance based with an athlete, that I think that they're capable of running. Like I've got an athlete in town here that Ali and I work with, and I mean he does all the training and he's brilliant, but I don't think he can find a 10 out of 10 pain cave, and I keep pushing that button. I'm like, you're not tough enough in your reps. You can't hurt yourself. This is a weakness for you. The lowest hanging fruit is that you are unable to go to that dark place and push yourself. So how's that going to transpose into your racing? As if you're always a little bit, you never get past 9 out of 10 in an effort. What are we going to expect on race day? And he's like, I just love the process of training. I'm like, no, every now and again, let's get after it. I mean, he should be running 320s in a 1K rep, and he's running 330s. And I'm like, that's unacceptable. And so, yeah, sometimes I'll have to put the boot in, and it's generally well received.
I think you're right though. Like it's very case by case, and like you've got to, it's not like a blanket approach. You'd be like, on week 3 of the training plan, tell athlete to go super hard and redline all week.
Yep, we have a Tarzan. We're going to call it a super compensation week, where we're just going to beat you down. That's one of Coops's tricks, isn't it? He loves the old hyper adaptation blocks.
Yeah. Do 1 month of 3x8 minutes non-stop.
Your VO2 max block. Yeah, good one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 8x3s. Yeah.
You chuck a lot of eggs at the wall. I have toyed with some of that block periodization, and to be honest, I haven't necessarily gotten better results doing that than ordinary macro cycles. And I don't know whether I'd push it to many more athletes again, because it hasn't translated into good race results when I have done it for athletes. And there's always a risk that that will break athletes. But I mean, we're down in the weeds now with coaching nerdery. I do love a bit of coaching nerdery, but that's part of the mastery of the game, right?
I've not intentionally steered away from that, but it is definitely an area where I know hours could go by. And
I'm passionate about it. You know, in my spare time, I'm on PubMed or look. Yeah, I spent this morning actually just looking at a few medical journals for any new endurance research. But I tell you, it's been a dry year for clinical-based trials because everyone's trying to work out how we can stop this pandemic. So there's not a lot of appetite for testing athletes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hey, that's very interesting. Hey, like, do you have a standout memory in your time with SQUADRUN that you're just like, wow, like I will never forget this moment. This was so rewarding to be able to experience this.
All the finish lines start to blur together. We've seen great results, and I would say more likely the really special moments have come from athletes that didn't think they could, that got it done. You know, when you send some athletes out in a race and you're like, look, I'm not worried about you, Majell. If I sent you to the Great Ocean Walkway 100K, I don't have to worry about you. You'll do your thing. You'll execute a smart race. It'll be evenly paced. Your nutrition's probably going to be okay. There may be a couple of wobbly moments, but I guarantee to get you home. If there's someone somewhere in that field who's like, I've never done this before and I don't know if I'm going to get home, when that person arrives on the finish line, it just demolishes you. And I got to tell you, the most rewarding coaching you will ever do is helping ordinary people, just real, genuine people, do something absolutely extraordinary, because it is. You and I take it for granted now, right? You could go out and have a 100K adventure for shits and giggles. But for some people to line up on a race, having spent 6 months worried that I don't know whether I can, you know, the day before, they still don't think that they can. And you're having those conversations with them that it's definitely achievable. It's going to be tough. It's not a sure thing for you. You're going to have to work, but I hope I see you on the finish line. And you know, more often than not, we do. We're very lucky with our athletes that our completion rate, you know, we're quite proud, like, you know, 98% of our athletes will finish UTA, whereas, you know, like 25% of athletes don't. So I think there's a little bit of bias in there because they're my athlete, because I know they've trained, but a little bit of what we've done to support them to be there. The best moments have probably all been on the finish line at UTA and seeing someone come back for what was a 24-hour 100K and they are bawling their eyes out, and then you start bawling your eyes out. And I don't know whether it's the tiredness or what, but it's pretty hard to do a decent job of commentary when you just go from tear-jerking moment to tear-jerking moment. The Tarawera 100-mile finish, we are adamant we need sponsorship by like Kleenex tissues or someone like that, because it's so hard. Like these tokies that we give out, just the people, the wreckage of humanity that arrives on that finish line, even people we don't know. If you've never been part of an ultra marathon before, if anyone is out there listening, get down and watch the last quarter of a race finish, the last 2 hours before cutoff, and stand on the sideline or in the finishing chute, or volunteer to be part of that last shift, because it's so special. You know, people talk about going to see the last people finish at Ironman. That sport's done and dusted in like 13 or 14 hours. Spread that over 30 to 36 hours and you'll see something really special.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. What an incredible, what an incredible display of humans doing some pretty, like you say, some pretty fucking adventurous stuff, you know, in all capacities.
Like terrifying. I don't know whether I can do this thing. Off I go then. That's terrifying. Well, you and I would struggle to go set that bar for us. And that's not like blowing smoke up our ass, but like, what would the terrifying thing be for you? Like run the east coast of Australia? Like there's probably some overwhelmingly ridiculous things. And maybe it isn't in your sport. You'd have to choose something else. Row to New Zealand. That seems like a good idea right now.
It does. It's a great idea. You're exactly right, because And I love what you said prior to hitting record. You were like, yeah, we're so afraid we train for it. You know, like we are, you know, being like, oh, but you can run 100K easy. And it's like, yeah, it's because I'm so scared of running it not easy that I train for it. And then I can semi-run it easy. You know, it's tough, but I've got some confidence that I'm going to survive. But like, yeah, like, what would the equivalent of that be where someone is standing on the start line, and it might even be a 5K race for some people, and they're just like, I do not know how I can do this. I'm just going to see what happens when I get to 4 kilometers and just hope my legs are still attached. Like, they could blow off. And like, what is that equivalent? And I'm too scared to go there right now in many capacities, because otherwise I'd probably be in a boat rowing New Zealand right now. But I'm like, no, I need to plan it. You know, I need to plan it. I need to train for it. I need to know that I can be uncomfortable, but comfortably uncomfortable, and get through it.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. I know it's definitely achievable for me, so I'm going to go do it. Yeah. That's why I think probably we're seeing the birth of, you know, the FKTs or the big adventure runs where people are like piecing together a bunch of trails and just seeing whether they can go and do it. And I love that, because the purity of that, you know, there's no aid stations and there's no, you know, race numbers, there's no photography, there's no finish line. And almost in some regard, what the beauty of that is, it actually takes the ego out of it, because it's not then about the person. It's just it's the person's experience. So that's kind of cool that everyone can go and do that now. I feel like when we start in that structured 5K environment, come and do a park run, you know, realistically, you know, everyone knows that they can do it, and this is the format for it because loads of people are doing it. But as it starts to get more challenging, they're like, oh, maybe I won't go for a big trail race, but I'll go for that trail race because I know that it's going to be well marked and well supported, and there's going to be medical crews and it's going to be safe. When slowly that gains momentum, it gets to the point where people are on the precipice, they don't need those supports anymore, and they can just go, I reckon I could run across the Southern Alps. I reckon I could run the length of the Tararua Ranges. And seeing those things happening out in the social media sphere is really cool, because people of the arm floaties are off. You know, the training wheels have come off the bike. People are out doing stuff now that probably 20 or 30 years ago were pretty much unheard of, but now they're cropping up every day. Right now, someone is doing an FKT on a trail you've never heard of.
Yeah. I mean, I find that, yeah. And I agree with you on many sense. And then sometimes I am like, I do still think that some people are doing FKTs that no one else has done before, and they make it a personal thing all about them. That isn't an adventure, but you know, that's something to be discussed later on.
You know what's cool though is that ultimately the end of it, they have that experience, and they'll always remember that experience, and that's really the beautiful thing. They may not necessarily remember the social media posts, the blog write-ups, the articles, or whatever it was. They'll always have that experience, and that's the special thing, because actually, I think ultimately that's probably why they really wanted to do it. What is inside us all to go out there and experience it and be part of it. There's something about that hardship, but the hardship in the landscape, in the environment, that you versus the environment is kind of a neat thing because you're in it.
Yeah, I think what you said there, like at the very, very end of the day, you know, the real reason why people do it is probably for that sense to secure, like to touch on that sense of adventure and to, you know, get that personal enjoyment out of it. And I just wish that in many ways, I do wish that was just owned and accepted. And it's like, you know what, like it's totally fine to do it like that. Don't feel like you need to make this like something that's going to blow up, or, you know, you have to get this time. Just like the real reason why people are going to resonate with this is the real reason why you're going to do it, and just go after it, like, and show that personal and human element to it. Like, because that animal side to it, you know, there's sometimes no even real way to describe why that is the case, and hard to describe why you really want to do that. But like, that's all part of it too. It's not really even having a reason.
To have such a pure experience. I think that's the coolest thing when you go out and you do it and you're like, wow, I'm really beaten up right now. Like I've been doing this for like 15 hours and I'm tired and sore and I'm still doing it. And I love that moment. Like I did 100K just for fun this time last year, actually. And I went into the forest and I was running had access. I was allowed to run a lot of mountain bike trails to forerun a mountain bike race before the race started in the morning. And it's a 100K mountain race, and there's something like 3,000 meters of elevation or whatever. And so I'm running and like it gets to like 13 hours and I'm like, wow, I'm really beat up right now. And then I realized that was why I went. That was the purpose of it. The purpose was to go and have the pure experience where you're like, oh, I'm kind of in, like in some regard, unknown territory, or at least unfamiliar territory. And I started laughing maniacally because it had arrived. The moment that I was seeking had arrived. And I was so happy with how beaten up I was that I was so full of joy. And I say that to some of my athletes now is like, you're so lucky. Like I saw a guy on a 100-miler the other day, a couple of weekends ago. It was a lap race. So he's just been going for it. And he was through 100K towards his first 100 miles and he looked wrecked. And I'm like, it's arrived. You're so lucky to be here. If you were to start this journey again, it would take you another 13 hours to get here. So how lucky you are that you're in this moment now. Embrace it. It's so special. It's so pure. Love it.
Yeah, it's so sadistic.
We should all find that moment. I don't know, like it's not. I don't want to say. Look, I don't like pain. Like no one looks forward to it. But that's what we're doing when we go out for a run. We're doing something you can't quite put your finger on. You know it's going to happen eventually. That's why you chose the 100K option, and then it happens, and you're like, you should embrace it, not resist it. That's the hard bit everyone's worried about. You should be like, yes. Finally, it's here. I'm wrecked. Yay.
This is the shell that I wanted to feel like right now.
Yes.
Human.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to ask you one final thing, and that is, I've been advised recently that you have made an executive decision to employ the meta genius that is Vajan Armstrong into your world of squad running. And I just want to know how did that decision come about? What are you bringing into your own personal sphere now that you have a closer connection with someone of that being? What are you going to get out of it personally? What are you going to get out of it?
For everyone that doesn't know, do you want to just quickly introduce Vajan Armstrong?
Well, I tried to avoid that because it's one of those hard things to do. Vajan Armstrong is a devout member of a meditation community, and Vajan lives his life in what like would typically be referred to as the life of a monk. He is a very dedicated person to his community, his meditation, his guru, and his sport, which is for him running. And I think that is something that is highly promoted in his community, the ability to push yourself beyond the limits of your mind and I think the word they use commonly is transcend. So to transcend that human experience and the human limits that we put on ourselves. So yeah, he is a member of the Sri Chinmoy community, and he has a very different way of looking at many things in life, which I think has had a pretty big influence on myself and yourself. And when I say influence, I think it's definitely just allowed us to have some great conversations and some great thought-provoking thought experiments. So that would be, how did I go there? Did I sum that up?
You did a far better job of introducing the concept that is Vajan Armstrong than I would have ever done. So thank you for framing that. And his role in my life is important for all of the reasons that you have just said. And who wouldn't want more of a relationship with that man, given an introduction like that? He is a very pure soul, and he has a lot of love for everyone And he, I think, has represented for me perhaps the things that I've needed the most. When I did race, he would give me some guidance that would help with my race execution in such a profound way that instead of focusing on the negative stimulus of the moment, he would help me focus on the positive in any moment. And even just a few interventions like that can change the performance of an athlete in an ultramarathon in a hugely significant way. And not only that, even if you were focused on a stopwatch, if that was your thing, obviously that's better. But the experience itself, in retrospect, is like I just have great races. Anytime I have a chat to Vajan before I go out and would race, I would just have the best races, and I'd look back on them and go, I just smiled all day, and enjoyed my time, and I guess physically feel like I achieved what was destined for me on that day, and I didn't make any mistakes by approaching it in a negative way or with a wrong mindset. So I think as a competitive athlete, I always thought I was, pretty big deal. I just thought I was pretty good at running, by my own measure. But Vajan always had this really great way of just rounding things off. And I think that I would only have ever chosen him to be my mentor and coach if I was ever in a situation to be training. So when he said that he was coaching, I asked him if I could help him in any way, in that we have people approach us all the time looking for, individual coach, private, support type relationships. And Ali and I don't have the capacity to individually coach a lot of athletes because of the way we run our squadron systems means that it's designed to disseminate information as widely as possible to help a lot of people, as opposed to like just help a few people, which is the standard coaching model. So rather than tell people that I can't help them, I've had the opportunity to say, actually, I can't help you, but I know someone who can, and then give them to Vajan, knowing that, man, that person has just got access to, I would say, probably the best, one-on-one coaching relationship that they could possibly have, if that seemed like a right fit for that athlete. Vajan doesn't have a lot. He doesn't want for a lot. He lives a pretty, he's not into consumption and capital and wealth. So coaching a few athletes and looking after his music store is enough for him. And that he's happy to be part of what we do at Squadron is great. But it really just comes down to the love that I have for that man, because he is an incredible meta human being. And he came and stayed a few days at my house recently, and I was like, I want to go home with him and I'm sorry, Ali, I have to be a monk now. And just go and live in the monastery with him, with the other men, and we could all do better with our mindfulness.
Give us some examples of how that has actually played out. Like what's a real example of what you've just spoken to then?
Like a practical intervention from an athletic standpoint is he says when you're in a race and it's tough and you can make this any distance you want, 5K, 10K or an ultra marathon, right? You're burning brightly, you're beaten up, it's gone on past that point where you're comfortable, but you're still pushing because you have a competitive endeavor and you want the best for yourself. He's like, imagine that being a massive storm at the ocean, right? And it's a huge storm and you can picture it. It's dark and it's, there's thunder and lightning, there's rain, the waves are massive and they're crashing. He says, but instead of being on the surface there with all of that turmoil, he's like, go within yourself and just come down 3 meters. What's happening? Is it getting quieter? Is it getting calmer? Come down 6 meters. Where are you now? Can you still feel the ocean? Come down 9 meters. It's calm here. It's darker still. The waves are crashing up there, but you can't focus on them. You choose not to. They're far enough away now. The sound is kind of mellowed out into the background and you're just in this calm place. The waves are crashing. You can acknowledge them, but you don't focus on them. And so when you're in a race, it's this, that could be, you could be talking about pain stimulus, right, in that situation, or fatigue from your leg, or, a niggle that you've got in your foot, or a blister that's forming between two toes, or things that you can, endure, but they become overwhelming. And in an ultra marathon, usually it's lots of things, right? It's not just one thing. It is all of that noise. It's thunder and lightning, and it's wet, and, the waves, it's all of those things, and the waves keep crashing. So just having an intervention like that, and just going, actually, let's just focus on the breathing. Let's have a think about what I can see, and what I can smell, what can I feel? The wind, right? And you focus on the wind and go, okay, well, where has that been? And what has it seen? What has it touched? How does it feel to me to have that wind across my skin, and how lucky I am to be in this moment? What can I see? I can see a lot of trees and how green and beautiful they are, and what stories they could tell, the passage of people and animals, the sunsets they've seen, all of these things that ultimately, if not rounding, become diversionary. So you aren't focused on the waves. And any interventions like that, like what he has to bring to running from a competitive level because of his, beliefs, but because of his practice, are so appropriate and so welcomed that I couldn't imagine my life without them. And I just wish I could have more of his time.
Do you think this is something applicable to every human, every athlete?
Almost everyone could do with mindfulness practices in some regard. And I think that we get the way that we are brought up and how society shapes us in our culture, that we're so disconnected from so many things. And you can say, that example is that, we impose ourselves on the environment. We look to shape. We don't appreciate for what's there. We go out into our garden and we make box gardens, and we trim hedges, and we enforce ourselves on the environment rather than just let us be part of the environment, or be in the environment. So I think that we need to break from our current mindset in the modern era. I don't think that we continue to be humanity that we've become, whether it be through capitalism or corporate greed or the political systems that we've fallen under. I think that we need a radical rethink, and that's got to come from perception. We have to understand, we have to see things a different way, or we need to feel ourselves in things a different way, and reversing that as best as we can. I think is probably going to come through, some mindfulness practice, and whether it's simply meditation or, spiritual teachings, or a better interest in arts and philosophy. These things probably need to be championed more now than ever. We'll say that we don't have the capacity to do it, or we don't have the money to do it, but we need to find it now, probably more than ever. I don't know. I don't know what the solutions are. I guess, look, things are going to be different when I'm in charge. I tell you, no. I love what Vajan has to give to the world, and what he has given me, I've welcomely received. And I don't know whether you've had him on your podcast, but it'd be your most downloaded podcast for sure.
It's something that you've spoken to really well, man. And it's not so much this isn't a celebration of Vajan in so many ways. It's just, it's the concepts, and like you say, like the practice and the ability to just look at the same thing in just a slightly, well, not a slightly different way, but a different way. And how that can have this really, really positive impact on not just running. It's a very, very all-encompassing, all-encompassing benefit to your life.
It is. You change how you are with people, how other human beings, how you respond to other people. Like I said, Vajan, you are the curator of your own experience. So how you respond to your interactions with people in the environment will change the person that you are through them and how they respond to you. We'll have to get Vajan on so people can now. This is starting to sound like a rich roll podcast, but there's a lot that he has to give, and I know that his practice is about liberating himself from the ego of oneself and the importance of the person within. So it'll be very hard for him to hear all of those nice things that I've said about him and you've said about him. So I hope he can have them and still complete his practice without being impeded by his inflated self-worth now.
I think, yeah, and it has to be said that Vajan is just human too, and his ego has driven him to compete in many, many trail running races for a long time. And I think we're all like, it's no secret that as much of a pleasant monk he is, he will jump over injured people to get to the finish line before the person behind him.
Oh, absolutely. He is that's
he's
part
savage.
of the practice is competitive.
He's savagely human.
What I do like is when he's with other monks, I like to ask him who is the best monk, because they can't compete, but they all know who's the better monk. So the whole liberating yourself of one's ego comes apart when they realize that there is an inherent ranking system to their ability, their closeness to liberation of ego.
Yeah. And we all know that that best monk is Abhinandan at the end of the day. So
it's hard to have favorites, but if you've got to have a favorite, Abhinandan is a contender.
Abhinandan is the contender. So join me and Kerry on the next part of our podcast where we speak about Abhinandan for 2 hours.
He just doesn't do any coaching. I wish he could help people like Vajan does.
Oh, Kerry. See, the thing is once you learn how to listen, he coaches you in every word that he says.
Oh, everyone is coaching you by that understanding there, mate. I think everyone.
Well, I tell you what, mate. We've been yarning now for about 2 hours, and I really appreciate it. It's always good to catch up with you, Kerry. Sometimes you are the God in my world that I appreciate so much, and other times I just want to reach to the screen and punch you with a love fist, because at the end of the day, when you do troll me, I know it only comes from a place of love.
Man, I don't know what you're talking about. It always comes from a place of love. I never mean ill will of anyone, and I appreciate that I occupy a special part in your heart, and that you'd be so excited to connect your fist with my face. That comes from a place of love.
We shared a room, a dorm room many years ago. It was probably the first time that I was like really working at Ultra Trail Australia, and ever since then, mate, it has been one epic time in between that. And I honestly, like, at the end of the day, I really wanted to be able to speak to you and Ali on the podcast, because like I've been able to see what you've both created in the last 5 years, and I think it's so good to have in the sport. Sure, you have to give it a name, and you have to like somewhat market it so people find out about it, but that only runs so deep, and the rest of it is genuine, like give a shit about people, athletes, experiences, and really like bringing the best out in people. And I see that on the finish line at 3 a.m. in the morning, where you've both been up for 3 days and you're still there just giving it everything you got. And then I get the opportunity to watch you both sleep at 6 a.m. in the morning when you've crashed and you don't know it.
Yeah, thanks, Mal. It's been a rad journey for the last few years, and I'm sure there's many more ahead of us. I'm excited to hear what the future is for you, and I hope it's short-term future, not long-term future, because to us, you've always been, as I'm sure Ali has said, like a leaf on the wind, or a seed, perhaps, just looking for the right place to sort of settle and start, really growing in some permanence. And I know that you'll find it. You're a really smart, charismatic, person that you connect well with other people. You have meaningful relationships with people, and if you put your mind to something, I'm sure it will be as Vaj and I like to say, a very potent experience.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. It might be on your living room floor, by the way, so just a heads up.
That's status quo. You're welcome back. My memory of you is usually standing in the corner of my kitchen with the biggest bowl of just oats and probably water, and that's it, just plowing through oats.
We need to stop this podcast immediately.
Get
I appreciate my access to your pantry every time. Thank you very much.
Most welcome. Thanks, Majell. We'll catch up in the future, mate.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining in for this episode of Stokely with Kerry Suter. Again, I hope you have a little bit more of an insight to what happens in the background of SQUADRUN. And if you do want to check them out a little bit more, please visit squad.run and you'll be able to find everything you need about your running and how to get better at it, how to achieve whatever it is you do want to achieve within the space. And you'll also get introduced to an incredible community, which will soon become your family if it fits. So thanks again to Kerry. Thanks again to yourself for listening. I really appreciate your time and effort in going to the lengths it does take to download a podcast and sit with it and listen all the way through. So it's very greatly appreciated, and we would love to hear from you here at Stokely. Until next time, please keep very well in the world, and we look forward to the next episode we release, and we hope you enjoy that equally as much as you hopefully enjoyed this one. Okay, keep well, and thank you a lot.